here it is. This is where I'm at, and let me put my microphone back on. I always tend to forget to put it on. Got to get the clip for it. I want to talk in this video about workplace bullying. I've just have done a video on school bullying, but it just made me remember some things about workplace bullying, which I think some people might be helped by it. I remember, when I first, I can talk about events and people about this. I'm not going to name them because 50 years later I've forgotten most of their names anyway. So, but I can talk about these things because most of the people who bullied me then were a little bit older than me, and they're probably gone by now. Probably gone to their wherever they go. Anyway, up or down. Anyway, so workplace bullying. I've when I left school, I did a year in the Air Force to train as a civil aviation communications person, and we learnt different things like electronics, learned how to solder things, learnt about the weather, radio theory, and typing. That's where I learned how to type, and I can type at 1,000 words a minute, and that's what one of my typing students at one of my secondary schools, I demonstrated on a computer program and typed 115 words a minute. They were quite shocked that I could type that fast. And I got a friend somewhere, and she knows who she is. She reckons I type at 1,000 words a minute, but I type. So you know who you are, Sarah. Anyway, I hope she actually sees this and enjoys it. But workplace bullying. I think that there's not many workers who have never experienced workplace bullying in some way or another. The different ways, there's some people who are just aggressive and nasty to you, and there's others who are just snakes in the grass, who are very nice to your face but real horrible behind your back. And I've experienced all of them. And I remember when I first got trained and I got posted after the Air Force, finished my 1 year, and we had to do compulsory military training in those days, and so that was my compulsory military training, and I was 6 years on the General Reserve after that, just in case they had a war and I got called up to the Air Force. Anyway, got posted to Wellington, New Zealand, and communication centre in Stout Street, which was the main communication centre in Wellington. And most of the people are okay, but there was a Samoan guy, and he was aggressive, rude, and he was a bully. And he just decided to pick on me, and he was just a straight-out bully. He never hit me or anything, but he just made life very uncomfortable for me, and I didn't like his presence at all. And I wanted to punch him in the nose, but he was bigger than me, stronger than me, so I didn't try. This was before I became a Christian and joined the church and became a non-violent, nice person. But I wasn't a nice person in my younger days, of course. But he was just a bully. And I found it very difficult working with him. And, and also there are other things about that job, about the shift work and everything, that I just couldn't cope. So I ended up getting another job. And I got a job at a paint company in Wellington, and the boss was really good to me. I mean, he was a really nice guy, and but his assistant was he wasn't all that nice to me. He tended to look down on me, and but anyway, I coped with him. And actually, the boss's wife worked in the same department, which was quite good. That was in the late 1960s, where they had that great big earthquake in Angahua, and really shook up our place. Our office was suspended on the side of the main warehouse, and boy, when that earthquake hit, I mean, it hit Wellington pretty hard. we got pretty well shook up, and the boss's wife just sat there completely frozen with fear. I mean, I could see it to this day. So it was sort of an earthquake that came as a sort of a shaking, and then suddenly, bump, just like that. You know, quite a dramatic one. Used to get those earthquakes back in Blenheim when I was living there, and get some real mighty ones. But this Anangahua earthquake was the big one that topped them all off. They've been having a few around that area, around Seddon area, just lately too. Of course, I'm now down in Christchurch, and I came down in Christchurch several years after the big earthquakes down here, and you know, we still get a few little shakes every now and again. But anyway, that's beside the point. So then, and the other, when I moved from Wellington to Palmerston North, I joined up with the Ministry of Works, and I found that it started off okay with the boss, and then the boss changed, and then these other guys, and there was this guy who was an ex-policeman, and he was just aggressive and rude and picked on me all the time. And of course, that when somebody picks on you at work and you're being bullied like that, it was all verbal bullying. There was no violence or anything. It was just verbal bullying. And it was because I believed different things that he did, and he decided that he was going to put me down whatever chance he got. And he would just criticise and just make my life a misery when I went to work. And then he was a good mates with the new stores officer, who the new boss. And so the new boss decided to put me on the most boring job possible. And of course, that's another part of workplace bullying, where a manager of a place wants to get rid of you. And so what they do, if they can't, you know, I'm not a quitter. I just keep on at it. I just don't quit just for the sake of quitting. But what a manager will do is put you on the most boring, dog's body jobs possible to just make coming to work just such an absolute bore. I'd finished my work by about 10:30 in the morning. And what do I do for the rest of the day? I just sat there being bored out of my skull. And then he used that as an excuse that I wasn't doing my work properly. But he wasn't giving me any decent work to do. That's the sort of a bullying approach that he had. Anyway, I resigned, and I went to work in a car parts company. And I found that quite enjoyable, and was working in the warehouse, and I got a lot fitter, throwing tyres from the floor up to a mezzanine floor when they had the big consignment of tyres that came in. And I learned how to deal with customers, and that was quite good. Enjoyed that. And then I decided that I needed to earn more money because the money wasn't very good in that place. So I found out, because I was already a typist, I joined up with the telegraph department and in Palmerston North. And you know, there were friends that I worked with there, and that was a very enjoyable job, and it was just a pity they phased out telegraph because of technology caught up with it. But while I worked there, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the typing, I enjoyed the people. And there was one guy who was just grumpy, grump all the time. He was grumpy at everybody. And I decided that instead of bouncing off him, I decided I was just going to be extra nice to him all the time. So I'd say to him, "Good morning, how are you feeling today?" You know, and I'd always be pleasant. And in the end, he was starting to be really nice to me. And he would smile at me, and I learned something, that if you're around a grumpy person, you know, the Bible says a soft answer turns away anger. And if a person's angry for whatever that he wasn't angry at me, but he was just angry in himself, and somebody who's just nice to him and treats him as with dignity and as a nice human being, then, you know, they're going to be nice to you. And I think that's important. That you know, it's like somebody I was watching on YouTube, who says you're never being an a-hole to somebody who's not an a-hole to you. I thought that was a pretty good piece of advice, which I've taken on board. Anyway, when Telegraph decided to phase out, I thought I needed another job, and I got a transfer within the post office to a suburban post office. And the woman that I worked alongside, she was the senior clerk and I was a clerk. And she was a woman in her 30s, and she was a frustrated woman. I don't think she had a man in her life. I'm not sure whether she really wanted a man in her life, but she was this angry, frustrated woman, and she just took out her frustrations on me because I was the soft touch. And she would sit behind in the office behind when there was big queues right out to the door, and she wouldn't go and help. She wouldn't help with the customers, and it didn't matter how much stress you're under, she wouldn't come out and help. She was lazy, and but she was a bully at the same time. And I had money go missing from my trolley because we were dealing with cash in the post office, and I had money go missing from my trolley, and we never knew where it came from. And I just wonder whether there was some light-fingered person in the office, and I won't say who. And this person's probably not alive anymore, so I mean I can talk about that. But there was another older lady who used to work in the office, and she had health issues, and you know, when she was working and the customers right out to the door, she would get angry. She'd go out and tear a strip off this woman and say, why don't you come out here and help, because, you know, I've got medical problems and I can't cope with this, and this is not right, and you're sitting back there on your backside while I'm serving customers. You know, so that was that, and then I got out of that. But she actually convinced the postmaster of that post office not to have me back, because I'd actually gone to district post office relief, where I travelled around different post offices relieving while people were sick or on leave and that. And she would convince the postmaster not to have me back because I was not the right sort of person to have back. But it wasn't my problem. It was her problem. And she was a bully. And she just didn't want me there. And she was a bully, absolute bully. And anyway, I mean, she disappeared out of my life. And then I joined up with the post. I got a promotion to the post office in Wellington, and that was quite good. That was a good year, and people were good to work with. And you know, I really enjoyed working there, and everybody was good to each other. We all did our jobs, and that was great. Then I got the chance to go to Teachers College and University, which I did all that. Spent 4 years doing that, and that was quite good. I found that the Deputy Director of Educational Studies, when I got my B grade in B pass in economics, he was very supportive. He said his son was doing economics and struggling at it, and I got a B pass in economics, and you know, he was very encouraging to me, and that made me feel that, well, if schools and teachers are like this, well then, you know, I'm going to have a good career. Well, of course I learned different once I got out into a school. Then I got my first teaching position in Dunedin, and that's way down south, real cold area of country. But I went down there in the summer and I acclimatised. A bit like Wellington without the wind down in Dunedin. Anyway, I've said in another video that my first year of teaching, I encountered another frustrated woman in her 30s. Yeah, I must attract people. I must have a personality that attracts people like that. Anyway, she was horrible. I mean, and she couldn't understand why the students wouldn't respect her when she started teaching there. And I found out why, because I would be teaching in the classroom beside hers, and she would go into the office between classrooms with a student, and I would hear her really berating that student and really putting that student down in the most nasty, horrible way possible. And I thought, I could never be like that. And you know, and it's no wonder that you know, students really didn't achieve very well. and they become rebellious in a school like that, and they become rebellious with She was a dean. She was a I think a fifth form dean or something, and so it's just horrible and nasty. And I know that teachers were like that. If I'd have known that teaching was going to be like that, I wouldn't have become a teacher. I would have gone and done something else with my life. But I had 19 years of teaching. Anyway, I went to got another job in Hamilton, and then got made redundant at both schools. And it's very interesting at the school in Dunedin. I got an opportunity to teach English, communication English, to a class, and the woman who was the head of department didn't want me in her department. Another one. It seems to be the women in that particular school. I won't name the school, but Sarah knows who I'm talking about. Seems the women in that school didn't like males. I heard the senior assistant, who was a female, screaming at another teacher in the staff room in front of everybody. I mean, it's just unbelievable what happens in these places. Anyway, so she didn't want me. So when it came time that they were going to have to shed a couple of staff members, she was on the committee to talk about who was going to be made redundant and who's not. She didn't have voting rights, but she had speaking rights. I should have followed the advice of the union person. He said, if you've got any objections to what was going on, just let us know. Well, I should have said, well, look, that woman who has speaking rights on that committee didn't want me in her department, criticised me the whole year that I was trying, didn't offer any help at all, and just put me down every chance she got. And I should have said that to the union person. However, I got another job in Hamilton, up in Hamilton, so I was on my way. And the principal said, well, you're going to your new job in Hamilton, and you're going as an experienced teacher, so the same thing's not going to happen to you. Well, it didn't really. It didn't. But I got made redundant again because secondary roles were falling, and it was just the way things were. It was government policy that they were reducing the number of teachers, and I just happened to be the one that it happened to. But anyway, that's life. That's life, and you cope with it. You can't choose what happens to you, but you can choose what you do about it. So anyway, that was that. So what was I going to say? Oh, that woman left that particular school anyway, and got another job at another high school in Dunedin. Don't know what happened to her since, and not very interested either. Not interested at all. I mean, she can go and live her life, and she can deal with people the way that she wanted to, and I hope that she had a good career in teaching, and that students actually did benefit from her teaching. I think that there are some people. I mean, I had the advantage of being out in the real workforce, working with and other jobs before I became teaching. I started teaching in my middle to late 30s, and some people that went through the school system, went through university, teachers college, and then started teaching, never been outside of educational institutions. I think they've missed out on a lot, and they become quite limited in that they don't understand the people who, I call it the real world. The educational world is not the real world. I mean, it's a cocoon, and the people feel more comfortable. Put those two women that bullied me in teaching, and put them out into a real job in a real company, working with real people, and that they would get their comeuppance. They wouldn't be able to. They wouldn't get anywhere. Anyway, I started to go primary teaching because roles were rising, so I wasn't trained primary. So anyway, I got a job teaching in a two-teacher school, running a two-teacher school up north, and that was quite good, and had a year doing that, and had a few problems with the groundsman, who felt that he could do what he liked around the place, didn't like the school principal telling him giving him hours of work. But anyway, that was beside the point. I mean, he was just angry about that. His wife yelled at me one day in the staff room, and that didn't make me feel too good. But that was their problem, not mine. And the chairperson came to me a couple of months later and says, "Well, we know who the real stirrer in the school is, and it wasn't you, Paul." So anyway, there was another deputy principal applying to the job that I was in, because I was only in a long-term relieving position just for the year. So I didn't apply, and I contacted the other lady who was applying, and I said, "I'm not going to apply for the job. You'd be better at the job than what I would. So I'm not going to apply for it. So I hope you get it." And she did, and she made a lot of improvements to that school. When I went there a little while later for their centenary, and she made a lot of improvements. She made a good school out of it, whereas I couldn't. I didn't have the experience, quite obviously. Then I got down to a school in Hastings, 3-teacher school, and the principal was an absolute bully. And I lasted one term, and I thought, I'm not putting up with this. So I went to my doctor, and he was a psychiatrist by trade, and he gave me 3 months sick leave, and that's I got out of that school, and halfway through the first term holidays, I just announced to her that I was resigning. And that was it. I was resigning, and gave her notice of my resignation. And then my psychiatrist, my CP, who's a psychiatrist, I said, I've got opportunities to just do volunteer relieving in schools. He said, that'd be good therapy for you. So I did that. But she found out about it, and she decided to knock my sick leave on the head. And in many ways, I was glad that we got the umbilical cord broken, and I carried on for the rest of that year relief teaching, and I found that was really quite good. Just incidentally, I found out later that that woman was done for certain things, and karma. If what goes around comes around, and if that woman watched this video, me saying this video, she knows exactly who she is, and she knows exactly what she's done, and she knows exactly what happened to her as a result. Actually, I was working at Manukau District Court when her case came up, so I was very much aware of it. She was very lucky that she did not encounter me, because I would have said, ha ha ha, karma, what goes around comes around. Anyway, that's beside the point. Anyway, I got into another primary school in Auckland, transferred from Hastings to Auckland, got a job there. And the first principal, he was a lovely guy. We sit in his office and talk about things, and he was very helpful. A lot of good advice that he would give me. And then they got another principal into that school, and he was very nice to my face. But the deputy principal, they got a new deputy principal, and he was a bully to me at school. He was a bully to me, and he used to sort of just make life just so difficult for me. And what I found out later, that the guy was the principal's hatchet man. And what happened was, the school had a vacancy, and this principal's wife had done her training by correspondence, and he wanted her to have a position in the school, and it looked like that she was going to get a position in the school. And then the role went down, and they lost that position. So guess who the principal decided to try to get rid of out of his school? Yours truly, me. And 1 minute I had extra responsibility for computing. There was no problems at all, and then suddenly I went from being competent to incompetent in one day. Suddenly I'm no longer competent. And what I realised later was that he wanted his wife to have a position in the school, and he wanted to get rid of me out of the school so his wife could have a position in that school. And very underhanded stuff. And I then applied, and I got a promotion as a senior teacher in another school, and he tried to contact the principal of the other school to try to stop that promotion from happening. Although the principal of the school that I was going to never, I put that to him, and he said no, it didn't happen. Well, of course, you can't depend on people telling the truth. No one's going to admit to that, are they? And also, that principal got my two referees into his office, and he demanded that they withdraw their references. And they didn't, but I was told not to go to the union about it, not to use their names, because that principal would just make their lives a misery. What a bully the guy is. What a bully. He's gone to another school now, and they had a big drama there. They had a big violent thing with female students or something. I found out not a couple of years ago, a year or so ago. But anyway, I mean, you know, if the board of the school likes him, and if they think he's doing a good job, well, okay, fair enough. I mean, he got a master's in educational administration and wanted promotion to a bigger school, but he never got it. So, you know, I mean, people know. I mean, the educational community in Auckland or in New Zealand, they know, you know, who is good and who's not. I don't think that I was the best primary school teacher there ever was, because I wasn't trained to it. I didn't have the personality, and I found out after 10 years of trying that I didn't have the personality to be a primary school teacher. I would have rather just gone back and taught computing in a secondary school, and that's what I should have done. But anyway, at the end of 2004, I gave it all away and became a victim advisor in the Manukau District Court. And then I saw bigger versions of the students I used to teach getting out of the paddy wagon and going into the cells of the court for their court cases. So, you know, that puts things into perspective, doesn't it? But, you know, I had a much better experience as a victim advisor. Although we had another frustrated woman in her 30s decided to try to make our lives a misery. But I'd learnt better by then, and I put in a written complaint, and it wasn't upheld, of course, because they don't know how to deal with bullying in these places. Workplace bullying, they don't know that it is an epidemic, and they don't know how to deal with it. They should get rid of the bully, leave the victim alone. The trouble is, it's the victim who tends to resign and go and do another job. Anyway, that woman, when she realised that she wasn't going to win and could go to the employment court, they gave her a settlement of about $3,000, and she left and became in another job in the area. So anyway, those are my experiences, and now that I'm retired, I'm out of range of all that. You know, I'm still me. Nothing's really happened. You know, when you're going through a bullying situation like that, you think, you know, it's like hell on earth, really. But, you know, if you're patient and you see it through, then, you know, the day comes where people come and go. And if you just maintain your patience and you know that you're okay and you're right and you're working as hard as you can, you're doing the best job you can, then people recognise that. And the best way is to just be patient and complain when you need to complain. And, you know, basically when you're undergoing workplace bullying, this is what you do. When you realise that you are being bullied, then you get your diary and you take notes of every day you're being bullied. So you got a timeline. You wait 6 months and have a 6-month timeline of all the instances that you were bullied by this person. And then you make your complaint, because you've got a timeline. You've got a documented timeline of dates, times and places that you're bullied. You know, when I have trouble with this groundsman up in the school up north, I'd write the incidences down in my diary. I found that one day I went looking for my diary and my diary had disappeared. Never found that diary. Didn't know where it was. And I reckon the guy took it. I reckon the guy stole it, because it had all the evidence in it. Because I'd just leave it on my desk. Anyway, that's what happens. So anyway, you know, that's the way to deal with bullying, is that you do dates, times and places, keep a diary, a timeline of all the instances where you're being bullied, what you did about it, and keep yourself beyond reproach. Don't try to retaliate, because they will use that. You know, that the woman who bullied me when I was a victim advisor, I mean, she tried to lodge a counter complaint that I and the colleague were actually bullying her, which, you know, that's the way she tried to defend herself, but she had no case. She had no case at all. So anyway, that's it. That's my video about workplace bullying, and I hope that helps some people. That you know, I've got to this age where I'm retired. I'm quite happily retired, and you know, I've been through all that, and I've survived, and I've more than survived. I'm very happy with the life I've lived and the career that I've had, and you know, I mean, I've happily married and brought up a daughter, 28 years old now. Proud of her. She's gone through her situations where she's been bullied as well, and she's come through it. She's come through a lot of things. So I'm very proud of her. Very proud of my daughter. And I've got a good wife who must be loved and obeyed at all times. She sorts me out. Not bullying. It's just being a good wife. Anyway, happy wife, happy life. Do you like my painting behind me? Here's the paint. Here's what we got. And my daughter has a black pug, and so we saw this picture and we decided we're going to put it up in our lounge. So, however, good luck to you all, and I hope that this is a video that plenty of people watch and are encouraged by. Here we go. I just got to turn this thing off. Where have I got the? I've got the camera right in front of the screen, so I've got to sort of go around here like this to turn it off, and then bye bye.